welcome. I hope you're doing well. It's been a while since the last time I made one of these. I think it was January or December. It's been a while. We're gonna do another one. For those of you who are new here or who might not have seen any of my previous videos, I've made 2 videos like this in the past. The concept is very simple. Basically, I follow Goodreads on X/Twitter, and on their account, they pose question prompts for people to answer in their comments. And I enjoy these questions. I find them quite fun. And so I've decided to make it a little series here on my channel where I take some questions that I like off of the Goodreads X Twitter account, and I put them in this little box, and I pull out some at random and answer them here. But that's the idea. Basically, it's a little Q&A of random questions that I have not asked, but that Goodreads have asked. And as of this video, that you guys have asked as well, because in my last video, I made a request of you guys. I asked you to put in the comments any questions that you wanted me to include in this little box. Bookish questions that you would like to hear other people's answers to, other people's thoughts on, and I would include them in the box to answer on camera another time. And a few of you did, and I put those questions in the box. I also continuously add questions that I would like to at some point answer that Goodreads posts over time in this box as well. And so now there's a nice balance between Goodreads questions and you guys' questions. Quite a few in here, which is fun. We've got at least another couple of videos in here now. I'm going to make the same request again because I always end up doing, I think, 5 or 6 questions per video, and it would be nice if I could keep filling up the little box with more questions so we don't run out. So if you have any bookish questions that you would like to hear other people's thoughts on, that you would like to hear other people discuss, or that you would like to hear others' answers to, that you're curious what other people think of, then feel free to submit those in the comments. I'll put it in the box and we'll get to it in one of these videos. I've made a distinction between the Goodreads questions and the questions that you guys have asked. Goodreads questions are on blank pieces of paper, and the questions that you guys have submitted are on lined paper. I'm gonna try and make sure there's a balance so I don't only answer Goodreads questions and not get to any of yours, and have you guys submit questions and then never get to them. So I'm going to pick out randomly and we'll see how balanced it gets, and if it turns out I need to actually look for questions that are submitted by you guys, I will. So without any further ado, let's just get to the box. The first question is a question one of you submitted. So the question is, if you could create your own story featuring a villain and hero from books you have read, separate books, which villain and which hero would you want to see pitted against each other? So if I have to take a hero and a villain from separate books. For a very classic hero and a very classic villain, I don't know. I can't come up with any. I think I need to think on this one. I really don't know who I would choose. I don't really think it's a good answer, but I think it would be a lot of fun to see Kazbrecker from 6 of Crows pitted against the Count from the Count of Monte Cristo. Not that I think the Count is a villain. I don't think he's a villain. I also don't think he's a hero. I think he's a very great character, and in some circumstances he's more gray than others. In other circumstances he's far more of a hero. He's a good person, I think, but I don't know. It's not so much the hero versus villain thing. It's just that I think despite them being very different people, they have very different backgrounds and they've ended up in very different places in life. They have some interesting similarities. I think their brains could function in quite a similar way. I think they're both very cunning and they're both planners. So both the Count and Kaz are the kind of people that would make a very solid, convoluted plan that has a lot of elements to it, and they're both very smart, and it would be very interesting to see them going for the same thing, how their methods would differ, because the Count he's rich, he has a lot of money, solves a lot of his problems, it helps him achieve a lot of things, he can buy his way through a lot of the issues that he'd probably end up facing, while Kaz has a team of people that he can trust and relies on and requires in order to achieve his goals, and he has street smarts and that kind of thing, and it would just be very interesting to see those things put side by side, and I would like to see how, going after the same thing, how they would compare. Both of them have brains, but one has a lot of means and the other has a lot of method, I guess. I don't know. I just, as soon as that thought entered my head, now I can't get it out of there. So I guess the Count and Countbreaker, even though I wouldn't really call the Count a villain. If I come up with a better answer to this question, I'll put it in the comments. But I need to think on it because my mind's blanking on every villain I know. So I don't know. Next question. Is a Goodreads question. And the question is, when you are reading a book, do you hear someone in your head narrating what you are reading? I've actually seen this topic debated quite a bit online. And apparently there are different, like, people experience the voice in their head differently. When I'm reading, it's my own voice that I hear narrating. So I never hear anyone else's voice in my head when I'm, like, thinking or when I'm reading. It's my own voice. And if I try to do other voices, it's my own voice making those voices. Some people can, like, hear other people's voices in their head. Like, they can imagine someone else saying something in that voice. I can't. When I try to do that, I hear my own voice attempting to make that voice, if that makes any sense. So yes, I do hear a voice, but it is always mine, and it is always, how to explain? It's like when I'm reading, even though I'm not speaking out loud, it's as if I'm speaking out loud in my head. Does it make any sense? Do you understand what it is I mean? And then other people don't hear voices at all, and it's just like pictures. Some people just picture things, and there's no narration going on. I mean, I picture things, but, like, I have to make the effort to picture things. And, like, the feelings, you don't have to, like, try. Like, I feel things when I read, right? I get upset, I get happy, I get angry, I get emotional. I do. But picturing things is something I actually have to make an effort to do, I think. I can't say I've reflected all that much on it, actually, but I feel like that's the case. Like, when I'm reading, pictures don't automatically appear in my head. I have to, like, make an effort to think, that's what that looks like. I don't know if any of this is making any sense. I read the comments of this post on Goodreads, and there were all kinds of experiences, and I was so surprised. Some people will hear their own voice narrating as if they're speaking out loud, like me. Other people can make all kinds of voices, apparently, and other people don't hear any voices at all, and it's just picturing scenery and, like, images, like a movie going through their mind. And I guess for some people it's probably a combination. That's wild to me. Like, that's so crazy, because mine is just so boring. It's just my voice in my head the whole time. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on this question in particular. What kind of reader are you? I'd love to hear. I'd love to know whether I'm in a minority or majority here, and what other people's experiences are when they read. Do you hear voices? Do you hear your own? Do you just have, like, a movie playing constantly? Or, like, what's going on in your mind when you read? Tell me, because this is such an interesting question. This is such an interesting topic to me. I'm just fascinated. Moving on to question number 3. It's another question from one of you guys. And the question is, if you ever took the Harry Potter house quiz, did you get what you expected? Does it reflect your personality, and would your friends agree? I have taken the Harry Potter house quiz. I've taken it several times, different ones, many times. And I've gotten a few different answers. But the answer that definitely appears the most often, and so is the house that I claim, is Hufflepuff. I don't really know what it is that makes me one. It's just, I don't really think that any of the other houses suit me, like, at all. And so, but I do think that Hufflepuff does suit me to some degree. I just feel very comfortable with that idea of being in Hufflepuff. I remember the first time I took the test and was sorted into Hufflepuff, and I was like, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. So I think I've probably always been a Hufflepuff, and it's just you don't really see all that much of Hufflepuff in the movies, so you kind of forget that they exist, which is really sad because it's actually a really cool house. Just a completely unbiased Hufflepuff saying that, but yeah. So does it reflect my personality? I think so. I think that there are probably elements to everyone's personality that could be suited to all of the houses, maybe more so for some people than others, and then some people definitely have a much stronger connection with one house in particular, or maybe two. But I don't know, I like I said, I don't think any of the other houses really suit me, not nearly as much as Hufflepuff does anyway. So I think I probably suit being a Hufflepuff. I think it suits my personality, definitely the way my personality has developed until now. I guess I probably have qualities that belong, or that belong in, like, other houses too. But even then, I think when I reflect back, I think I've probably always been a Hufflepuff. I think so. And would my friends agree? I think so. I think they would agree too. I don't think they would have put me in any other house, actually. I think that when they hear, oh, you're a Hufflepuff, oh, well, that makes sense. I think so. So I think I've definitely ended up in the right house. I have taken the test. Hufflepuff is my Hogwarts house. I think it suits my personality, and I also think that my friends would agree. Next question. Oh. Is this 2 or 1? Okay, we have 2 here, so I'm going to take 1. This one is another one from one of you guys. Which author and which character would you love to grab a coffee or tea with? Alive or not alive? Because I would love to have been able to speak with Agatha Christie and J.R.R. Tolkien. Have a cup of tea or coffee and just chat. Just hear them speak about their writing. But as for like current writers, there are plenty of authors that it would have been so cool to be able to just have a coffee or tea with them and just hear a little bit about their, like, how they write, how they come up with their ideas, hear a bit about the process, hear a bit about what their own thoughts are on their work, on the characters they come up with, just chatting over coffee or tea. Maybe UNESCO. We could go to the cafe that Harry is always visiting, because it does exist, and it has a little plaque over the table which says Harry's favorite table, just for the sake of going there with the author. I think that would be so cool. As for characters, I mean, the Count of Monte Cristo he's on the top of my list. The Count of Monte Cristo has to be on the top of my list. And I would also really, really love to have had just a nice coffee or a tea with almost any of the heroes from the Lord of the Rings. Could I invite like the entirety of the Fellowship for like a brunch or something? Because I feel like that would be so much fun. Actually, it would probably be me crashing their tea party and just hearing their stories and just seeing them have fun and have cool conversations. And I don't know, that would be really, really pretty cool as well. It would be interesting to go have a coffee or tea with Sherlock Holmes too. He could read me, and I don't know, I think that would be fun as well. Joining the Devil and Miss Prim for a coffee would be interesting too, because they had a lot of philosophical debates, and like it would be fun to prompt them into talking about some things and hear their thoughts on my own opinions on things. The Six of Crows crew would also be fun to hang out with for a little bit. I think, I don't know, there are endless characters that I could imagine, or like that I would want to have coffee or tea with. I don't know, I could go on. I guess I could go on. Plenty of characters that I think could be a lot of fun to meet with. And then the question that was a Goodreads question was, which book feels like a best friend to you? Which book feels like a best friend to me? I'm not sure what this means. I'm not sure if this means what's like a comfort read, or like a favorite book, or a book that you would like want to take everywhere with you, or like I don't know. I don't know what this question means. Which book feels like a best friend to you? Or like a book from like, is it a book from childhood that matters a lot? I'm tempted, really tempted to say The Count of Monte Cristo because it's my favorite book. But I don't think it feels like a best friend. And I have comfort reads like The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I love that book too, but it doesn't feel like a best friend. I don't know what this question is aiming at. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at my bookshelf and see if anything jumps out at me. Because give me a second. You know what? I think that I think that a book that feels like a best friend to you is a feeling on its own. It's not meant to be a favorite book or a comfort book or a cozy read or whatever. I would like to think that this is a very specific feeling, that there is genuinely a feeling of, yes, this book is like my best friend. And I don't think I found that book yet. And I'm very excited now for when I do. Because that sounds really cool. It sounds really nice, pleasant to have a book that feels like a best friend. I wonder what that could be. If I'm going to make some predictions, I can try and predict some books that I have on my like radar that I want to read and that I think might end up might have the potential to be this kind of book. I don't know what I would base it on. It's just a preliminary initial vibe of the book based solely on what little I know about it before I actually read it. The following books could maybe end up being this book that feels like a best friend. Maybe Welcome to the Hyeonamdong Bookshop has the potential to become a book that feels like a best friend. Maybe. It's a very bookish book, which I think that kind of, for me, I feel like that might have to be a prerequisite, maybe, I'm not sure. So just on initial vibes and knowing nothing else about the book, this might be a book that could potentially feel like a best friend. The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern might also have this potential, again, based solely on initial impressions and knowing very, very little about what this book is about. The vibes just kind of seem right, and we'll see. And then also Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, I think, based on initial vibes alone, might also be a book that could potentially become one that I could use as an answer for this question. So turns out I am now on the hunt for a book that feels like a best friend. Because again, I feel like that must be a very specific feeling, and it's not like your favorite book or a comfort read. I mean, it could be, for all I know. They can overlap, but none of the books that I've read initially jump out at me as a best friend feeling. So I guess now I'm searching for that and hoping that maybe one of these books could become that very answer. Who knows? We'll find out eventually. But for now, turns out I don't really have an answer for this, and I'm on the search. I think we've done 5 questions, so let's do one more. We're gonna pick a Goodreads one. Ooh, that makes it a perfect balance. This is the 3rd question from Goodreads, and then I've answered 3 of your questions. So, perfect balance. Excellent. This one asks, between ebooks, audiobooks, paperbacks, and hardcovers, which format do you find yourself gravitating to the most? I've talked about this before on my channel. I don't know in what videos. Have we talked about this in a previous Goodreads Q&A video? I know I've mentioned it in my BookTube Noob video. I like having physical books. I like having physical books in my space. I like having bookshelves, and keeping the books that I really like physically is something I enjoy, but I don't love hardcovers. They're bigger, they take up so much more space, they're so heavy, you can't bring them anywhere with you, and I'm the kind of person who's always taking a book with me whenever I go someplace, and they're not as durable in the sense that most hardcovers come with dust jackets, and those things are fragile. They're just so easy and quick to damage, and that's just not a vibe. I just don't love that. I don't really care all that much if the cover of a book or the back of a book is damaged, but I do really like to have a nice spine, because that's usually the side of the book that's faced outwards. So I'm a paperback person for sure. Paperbacks will always be my go-to and my preferred format when it comes to books. That doesn't mean that I don't use the other formats. I do get hardcovers of books that I really, really love, but that's more of for me, from a collector's point of view. I got the paperback version, loved the book, it became a favorite, and so then I start collecting editions of the book. That's when I would get a hardcover, and I want to continue doing that. There are plenty of books that I love that I don't have the hardcovers of yet, but that I do want to have the hardcovers of, because I'm a collector, bit of a book dragon, in that I hoard books that I really, really like. When it comes to when I go out and buy books, I buy paperbacks. I'll have a paperback copy of almost all of my books, because that's the edition that I always go for first, unless, there's a super deal, which has happened a couple of times on a hardcover and it ends up cheaper than a paperback, or, which is also the case, there is a book on my shelf which only exists in hardcover. There is no paperback for it, and so I have no choice. I have to have it in hardcover, which annoys me, I'll admit, but it is what it is. So yeah, those are the 3 reasons why I have the hardcovers that I do, but my go-to is always paperbacks. I like paperbacks because they're usually smaller than hardbacks. I like that they're floppy. I mean, not every paperback is super floppy, but they're not hard, which I don't find very comfortable to use when reading. I don't find it comfortable to be reading from a hardcover. And paperbacks are also much lighter to take with you, and I take with me books most places I go, and dragging with me a hardcover would just be torture for no reason. So my bookshelves are like 94% paperbacks. I don't have an e-reader. I'm going to get one at some point for convenient purposes when I travel. Just because to be bringing with me physical books every time I travel somewhere where I know I'm going to be long enough that I'll finish more than one book, that's just so much space wasted. But I don't love reading on a screen. I don't know that I'd still be reading from the e-reader when I'm at home. I like flipping pages. It feels much more like I'm reading and like I'm making progress when I'm flipping pages. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, I know that having an e-reader would be something I'd mostly use when traveling, especially as a mood reader. You can't really plan what you're in the mood for, so you bring even more books. You always end up getting a book or two wherever it is you are. On top of that, I tend to do that. So it's so much space that it's wasted. And so an e-reader would be very convenient. When it comes to audiobooks, I can only really use an audiobook if I also have the physical book to read along with. Like, I'm not the kind of person that can just put an audiobook on and do other things, because I'm distracted so easily and I'll have to re-listen and just re-listen and re-listen, and it would take me forever. So I don't like audiobooks on their own. However, I do use audiobooks as a kind of crutch when I'm either really struggling with the language. For example, for university, one of the books that we read for a class was Heart of Darkness, and that was written in such a weird way that I struggled so much with just reading the book, and so I had to use the audio as well to try and help me through it. That was a whole thing. Where I do know that audiobooks really help me is when I'm making my way through a really, really, really big book and there are parts that drag. If I'm making my way through a really thick book and I get to a part that's so boring or that's so slow, I will usually I never end up getting past that point if I don't put on an audiobook, just to kind of switch up the reading experience a little bit. I found that for me that really, really helps. And then there are the cases where an audiobook has a full cast, which in some cases just makes the reading experience unparalleled. Like, for example, with Daisy Jones and the Six, there's a full cast. Every single character has a different narrator, and it just made the experience of reading it 100 times better. The book itself is just a very long interview. Reading that book just alone, reading the book physically alone, I don't know what it's like because I didn't do it, but I can understand why some people would be very bored by it. But with the audiobook, which is a full cast, it feels so much like you're genuinely listening to an interview, and it becomes so engaging because you can hear the emotions when they chuckle, when they scoff, when they mumble something. It becomes so real, and it was so much fun to read the book while listening to the audiobook. It made the experience for me. I don't think I would have loved Daisy Jones and the Six as much as I do if it hadn't also been for the audiobook. So audiobooks, very specific cases where I either feel like I need a little bit of help or a little bit of a push, or when it will elevate the reading experience another notch or two. So yeah, to summarize that very, very long answer, I'm a paperback person. When I start collecting books, I'll usually also get a hardcover of a book that I love. I'll also have hardcover books where the other options were either non-existent or just not as good. I will eventually get an e-reader because I think it'll be very convenient when I travel, and audiobooks are usually just a tool to help me when I struggle with reading a book for one reason or another. Or, of course, to elevate the reading experience when there's a full cast. So that's that answer. So 6 questions, which I think that's what I've done in both of the previous videos in this series. I think I did 6 questions. So we're going to stop here. It's more than enough. This video is probably already far too long, but it was fun to answer not only Goodreads questions, but your questions as well. Thank you so much to those of you who submitted your own questions to include in my little question box. If any of you would like to add more questions that I'll put in the box for next time, then feel free to do that as well. We're not running out anytime soon. There are plenty of questions in here still, but the more questions we have, the more videos like this I can make. So feel free to leave any questions that you would like to hear my answer to or others' answers to. and I'll include them and it might pop up in the next video. Again, if you guys have your own answers to these questions that you would like to share, then feel free to do so in the comments, and I'll leave the link to Goodreads' Twitter account if you want to head on over there and take a look for yourself through the comments of these questions that they've posed. I'll try to make sure that there's not as big of a gap between these videos as there has been now between this one and the last one. Again, there are plenty of questions, so I don't really have much of an excuse. I find these fun though. I don't always feel like I have the best answers, and often I end up with more to add after this video has gone up, and a lot of times the discussions we have in the comments puts me on track for even more to add to my answers. So I'm actually considering next year, or whenever we run out of questions for these videos, to answer the questions I've already done, but in an updated way. I think it'll have to wait for a little while because I want to have more books and more reading under my belt before I go into updating my answers to these questions, so my answers would look differently. It'll be for the future, but I think that could be fun. Needless to say, I can keep this series alive for a very long time. But yeah, that's it for this video for this time. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions on anything that I've talked about in this video in the comments. That's where I will see you guys. Again, I'll request that if any of you have questions you would like to add to the question box for another video, feel free to leave those too. But that's all from me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a really lovely day. I hope you have a really fun week. And I hope that the book you're reading is a really, really good one. Bye!